Wait, what did you say the answer was? Mr. Thornton's voice cracked, eyes wide as he stared at the whiteboard. He had written a massive equation full of symbols and Greek letters, convinced no one in the school could solve it, certainly not her. But the janitor, the black janitor who usually mopped the floors and emptied the trash, stood calm and steady, her eyes sharp. I said it's 7.162. Your mistake was in the fourth step. You forgot to divide by the coefficient when you transitioned the variables. A deadly silence fell over the teacher's lounge. The other teachers, sipping coffee and pretending not to watch, were frozen mid-sip. One of them choked on her muffin. Mr. Thornton stepped back, flustered. He looked at the board, then at the answer scribbled in perfect handwriting, her handwriting, then back at the board again. How did you? The janitor, her name was Angela, just tilted her head. She didn't smile, didn't smirk, just wiped her hands with a paper towel and said, I mop floors. Doesn't mean I can't see dirt on the board. The silence turned into whispers. Someone in the back dropped a stapler. Mr. Thornton's mouth opened and closed like a confused fish. This isn't. What kind of trick is this? No trick, Angela said. You challenged me. I answered. But no one understood how she had done it. No one knew how someone who cleaned toilets for a living just solved a problem that most math professors would struggle with. And most of all, no one understood who Angela really was. It all started 5 weeks earlier. 3 days into the new school semester, the sound of squeaky wheels rolled through the empty hallway. Angela pushed her cleaning cart with quiet focus. She wore a plain gray uniform with a small name tag that said only Angela S. Her brown hair was tied back in a tight bun, and she wore thick black gloves that reached past her wrists. She didn't speak much. Most staff passed by her like she was part of the wall, except Mr. Thornton. He taught AP Calculus and thought himself the smartest man in the whole district. Every Monday morning, he would bring donuts and boast about the hardest problems he could solve. I got a PhD from Stanford, he would say, brushing powdered sugar from his blue tie. I could teach college if I wanted, but I choose to enlighten the youth. That Monday, he noticed Angela quietly mopping near the vending machines. You missed a spot, he said casually, pointing to a corner that didn't need cleaning. Angela didn't reply. She mopped the spot anyway. She's got headphones in, a younger teacher whispered. No, she doesn't, Mr. Thornton replied. She just ignores people. The week went on. Angela continued her quiet cleaning. She never spoke during the day and left each evening just after the last bell. Until one Thursday afternoon, something strange happened. The school's computer lab was locked, but Ms. Clark, the computer science teacher, needed to get in. Her class had accidentally locked the teacher's account with a coding error. IT said it would take 3 days to fix. Angela passed by, saw the frustrated teacher banging on the keyboard, and paused. You trying to reset the BIOS? She asked quietly. Ms. Clark blinked. What? Angela stepped inside, her gloves still on. You can override the lockout if you access the setup utility and roll back the system date. You'll bypass the security protocol. Ms. Clark blinked again. How do you know that? Angela didn't answer. She pressed 3 keys, opened the terminal, typed something so fast Ms. Clark couldn't keep up, and like magic, the system unlocked. Ms. Clark just stared. Wait, she said. Wait. How did you do that? Angela wiped a speck of dust from the monitor. I clean. I see things. Then she walked out. The rumors started spreading that day. Hey, did you hear? The janitor knows computers. No, not just knows. She's like a genius. Nah, come on. She's a janitor. But the rumors grew louder. That's when Mr. Thornton decided to put an end to them. He hated distractions, especially the kind that made him feel small. The following Monday, in front of 6 other teachers in the lounge, he cleared the whiteboard and scribbled a monster of an equation. Symbols, variables, multi-layered fractions, and limits. This, he declared, is unsolvable without at least third-year university-level mathematics. I'd like to see our math genius janitor take a swing at it. Angela had just walked in to empty the trash. She glanced at the board. Excuse me, she said softly. You heard me. Thornton smiled like a shark. Since you're such a whiz, why don't you give it a go? Angela stood still. The whole room turned to her. Some smirked. Some looked uncomfortable. I clean, she said. That's my job. Well, he said, gesturing with the marker, just for fun. Unless you can't. And with that one sentence, he said it all. He didn't believe she could. He didn't want her to. He wanted to remind everyone that she was just the janitor, a black woman who mopped their floors and polished their desks. Nothing more. Angela walked up, took the marker, and 5 minutes later, the impossible problem was solved. It wasn't just right. It was brilliant. Each step was clear, logical, elegant. That's where the chapter began. And now, the next morning, when Angela arrived for her shift, something felt wrong. The hallway was too quiet. Teachers avoided her gaze. One even turned a corner when she saw her coming. Angela stepped into the storage closet and stopped cold. Her cart was gone. The shelves were empty. On the wall, in big red letters, someone had spray painted, "Stay in your lane." Angela stared at the words, her hands tightening into fists. The hallway was silent. But this time, she wasn't. She stepped out slowly, looked around, and began walking, not to the principal's office, but straight into Mr. Thornton's classroom. He was about to start a lesson. He turned, surprised. "What are you doing here?" he asked. Angela looked him dead in the eye. "I want to know who did it," she said. And then, before he could answer, she pulled something from her back pocket. A small black notebook. She opened it, and what was inside would soon turn the entire school upside down. Angela's fingers gripped the small black notebook, its cover worn at the edges like it had been handled hundreds of times. The room was so quiet, you could hear the second hand ticking on the classroom wall clock. Mr. Thornton stood frozen, the chalk still in his hand. His students, some with their backpacks only half unzipped, stared wide-eyed at the scene. Angela didn't speak right away. She turned a page, and then another. What is that?" Mr. Thornton asked, a nervous laugh twitching at the corners of his mouth. Angela didn't answer. Instead, she raised her head slowly, her eyes steady. "This notebook," she said, "has everything I've seen, everything I've heard, and everything people thought I wasn't smart enough to understand." Mr. Thornton's face turned pale. "You're bluffing," he snapped. "You think you can walk into my class and threaten me with—" "I'm not threatening," Angela said calmly. "I'm remembering." She shut the notebook with a soft thud. Then she turned and walked out. The silence in the classroom exploded into whispers the moment the door closed behind her. "Did you see her face? What's in that notebook? She's not just a janitor." Angela didn't hear them. She walked straight down the hallway, past the vandalized closet, past the rows of lockers, and out the back door toward the maintenance shed. She needed air. But more than that, she needed to think. It had been years since she'd opened that notebook in public. She hadn't wanted to. But when she saw the red spray paint and the look of hatred behind it, something inside her had cracked open. She wasn't going to be silent anymore. Not this time. 2 hours earlier that same morning, Principal Harris sat in his office with a coffee in hand and a headache coming on. He'd heard the gossip. Of course he had. A janitor solving advanced equations? A math teacher left speechless? At first, he thought it was just one of those silly hallway rumors. Students had a way of turning small things into fairy tales. But then the emails came. From teachers. Some curious. Some suspicious. And one furious. "Thornton. Unprofessional conduct," he had written. The janitor interrupted a class. Accused staff. Created a hostile environment. Principal Harris had sighed. Now, as he looked out the window, he saw Angela walking behind the building. Not rushing. Not panicked. But different. Determined. He reached for his phone. "Get me Angela Simmons," he said into the receiver. "Tell her I need to see her. Now." Back near the classrooms, in a corner of the faculty lounge, Ms. Clark sat with her laptop open, reviewing a computer science quiz. She wasn't typing. She was staring. She remembered the BIOS incident. The way Angela had solved the lab issue in seconds. And now, with all the buzz about the math problem, a thought kept tugging at her. She tapped her pen against her mug. Something didn't add up. Angela didn't just know a few things. She knew everything. Math. Tech logic. But why would someone that smart be cleaning floors? Unless. Ms. Clark opened a browser and began typing fast. She didn't know what she was searching for exactly. But she knew one thing. Angela Simmons wasn't who they thought she was. Meanwhile, back behind the school, Angela sat on a small crate beside the maintenance shed. Her notebook lay open in her lap. She flipped through the pages. Inside were drawings, diagrams, math problems written in pencil, ink, and sometimes coffee-stained margins. There were names, too. Teachers, students, notes scribbled beside them. Kind, cruel, likes to pretend I don't exist, helped a student cheat. She paused on a page that said, Ethan, ninth grade, afraid to answer in class. Solves equations in his notebook during lunch. Angela remembered Ethan. Quiet boy. Sat alone. Once dropped his calculator and almost cried because he thought it was broken. She'd fixed it without saying a word. He never even knew it was her. She closed the book gently. That's when she heard footsteps. Principal Harris. He approached slowly, hands in his coat pockets. Angela. She looked up but didn't stand. Rough morning, he said, trying to keep his voice light. Angela looked at him calmly. Did you see it? The graffiti? Yeah. Maintenance is painting over it now. She said nothing. I wanted to talk to you, he continued. About what happened yesterday. About Mr. Thornton. I didn't do anything wrong, Angela said. He challenged me. I answered. I believe you, the principal replied. But this school, it doesn't always handle surprises well. Angela raised an eyebrow. That a warning? He looked uncomfortable. No, he said. It's an invitation. To tell your side. Because right now, people are making up their own. Angela stood up, brushing dust from her sleeves. You want me to explain myself? I want to understand, he said. And I want to help you, if you'll let me. Angela stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she handed him the notebook. Start here, she said. Inside the school, Miss Clark's computer dinged. Her eyes widened. She had found something. An old university article, faded and buried beneath old pages. Meet Angela Simmons, the 22-year-old who solved the Millennium Prize math problem no one else could. Her photo was smaller than the headline, but it was unmistakable. Same eyes, same quiet focus. Except back then, she was smiling. Miss Clark leaned back in her chair, stunned. Angela Simmons wasn't just a genius. She was the genius. And suddenly, everything made sense. But just as Miss Clark reached for her phone to call the principal, a fire alarm blared through the hallway. Students screamed. Lockers slammed. The lights flickered. Smoke curled from the science lab on the second floor. And inside the chaos, someone was missing. Mr. Thornton. He hadn't shown up for class. And his door was locked from the inside. The alarm shrieked through the school like 1,000 angry sirens. Students poured out of classrooms in a rush of panic, backpacks swinging, shoes slapping hard against the tiled floors. Teachers barked orders over the noise, trying to herd them toward the exits. Smoke crept along the ceiling of the second floor, thin but growing. The air was sharp with the smell of burning plastic. Angela burst through the back doors and into the main hallway, her boots echoing against the marble floor. Someone grabbed her arm. Angela, no? You're supposed to go out. The fire drill. It's not a drill, she snapped, pulling free. Mr. Thornton's classroom is up there. Let him stay there. A voice muttered behind her. But she ignored it. She raced toward the stairs. Wait, Miss Clark shouted, appearing beside her. I'll come with you. Angela shook her head. Too dangerous. I'm not letting you go alone, Miss Clark said, pulling a fire extinguisher from the wall. Let's move. The two women disappeared into the smoke. Room 204 was filled with haze. Angela's eyes watered as she pushed against the door. Locked. She banged on it. Mr. Thornton. No answer. Step back, she told Miss Clark, who had already pulled her sleeve up over her nose. Angela pulled a slim rod from her back pocket. It looked like part of her cleaning card, but when she inserted it into the crack of the door and twisted, the lock snapped open with a sharp click. Inside, Mr. Thornton lay slumped behind his desk. A small trash can was tipped over nearby, and smoldering. Smoke curled up from a stack of burning papers. Angela dashed forward and yanked him up by the collar. He's breathing, she said. Help me drag him. They pulled him out into the hallway, where clearer air was pouring in through the windows. Teachers ran toward them, shouting. A student began recording on their phone. The nurse rushed over with a damp towel, pressing it to Mr. Thornton's forehead. His eyes fluttered open, glassy and confused. What happened? He mumbled. You passed out, Angela said calmly, standing over him. You lit a fire. Forgot you locked the door. I didn't, he began, but his voice cracked. Angela just handed him something. His own lighter. Still warm. He stared at it like he had never seen it before. And then he said something no one expected. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. Angela said nothing. She turned and walked away. That night, the school was quiet again. Firefighters had cleared the building, declared it safe. Parents had picked up their kids. The principal's office light still burned. Angela sat across from Principal Harris, her hands folded neatly in her lap. "You saved his life," he said softly. She nodded. "It doesn't make him right." "No, but it makes you better than most." Angela didn't smile. She looked tired. "You have a gift, Angela," he continued. "I've seen the notebook, the math, the computer systems, the files. You don't belong behind a mop." Angela looked down. "I used to be someone. A long time ago. But when I spoke too loud, I lost everything." Harris leaned forward. "You're not invisible here anymore." Angela's eyes flicked up. "You say that now." He paused. "Then, what if we changed that? Officially?" She raised an eyebrow. "Come back tomorrow," he said. "Not as a janitor." Angela didn't answer right away. She stood, picked up her notebook, and walked to the door. Just before leaving, she turned and asked, "What if the staff says no?" Harris smiled faintly. "Then I remind them who runs the school." Angela walked out without another word. The next morning, the school buzzed like a hive. Everyone had heard. The janitor saved Mr. Thornton. She unlocked the door like a spy. She has a notebook full of secrets. She used to be a math genius. But no one knew the full truth yet. And as the students settled into their first period classes, a voice came over the loudspeaker. "Good morning. This is Principal Harris. I'd like to introduce a new addition to our academic staff. Ms. Angela Simmons will be joining us as a special academic consultant. She'll be assisting in math, computer science, and advanced tutoring programs." The school went silent. Students froze. Teachers stared at each other. Angela was staff now? But as jaws dropped, another sound came down the hallway. Heels, clicking steadily. Angela entered the building wearing a black blazer over a white blouse, her name tag now reading, "Ms. Simmons, Academic Consultant." And she was headed straight to her new office. But as she walked past the faculty lounge, the door burst open. Mr. Thornton stepped out. He didn't look angry. He looked afraid. And behind him, something strange happened. Every eye turned toward Angela. Except for one. A new staff member. One Angela had never seen before. He watched her carefully, then pulled out his phone. He whispered into it as she passed by. "She's here. Just like you said." Angela felt it immediately, the kind of silence that wasn't just quiet, but watching. The weight of it followed her down the hallway, even after Mr. Thornton ducked back into the lounge and shut the door behind him. But it was that new face, that man she didn't recognize, who sent a chill down her spine. He hadn't looked away when everyone else did. No surprise in his eyes. Just calculation. Angela's instincts, once buried under years of silence and mop water, flared back to life. She kept walking, kept her head high, but she tucked the black notebook tighter under her arm. Her new office was a small corner room off the library, still dusty and clearly unused for years. A single desk, a chalkboard, no nameplate on the door yet, but it was hers. And for the first time in a long time, she closed the door not to hide, but to plan. She placed the notebook on the desk and pulled out a slim, silver laptop, one no one at the school had ever seen her with. Within seconds, she was inside a private server. Her own. Encrypted. Hidden. Untouched for 5 years. She had never wanted to go back in. But things were moving now. Fast. She typed a string of commands, fingers moving with speed and precision. Login. A. Simmons. Access. HRO_database_rebuild. A long list of folders opened. Mathematics. Cybersecurity. Faculty audio logs. Surveillance archive. Hidden users. Angela's hand hovered over the last one. Hidden users. That new man. The one in the hallway. She didn't recognize him. But he recognized her. That wasn't just a new teacher. That was someone who knew. She clicked the folder. It asked for a biometric scan. She pressed her thumb to the pad. The lock turned green. Inside was a single file. File 07. Harrison_group/Clean Initiative. Angela's heart skipped. She hadn't seen that name in years. Not since the day her life fell apart. Clean Slate was supposed to be a security contract, a think tank project. One she helped build. One that vanished after her accidental leak. That's why she had to disappear. Why she became invisible. And now, someone from that world was here. She slammed the laptop shut and locked it in the desk drawer. Just then, a knock came at the door. Angela rose slowly. When she opened it, she was surprised. It was Ethan, the shy ninth grader from her notebook. He clutched a workbook to his chest, eyes low. Miss Simmons, he mumbled. They said I could come here if I needed help. Angela nodded. Come in. He stepped inside and took a seat across from her. She opened her drawer and pulled out a clean sheet of paper. What's the problem? Ethan turned the book toward her. A page of scribbled equations, half erased. I get the logic part, but I don't know why it works. Angela leaned in. That's because no one ever taught you why. They just taught you how to memorize. She picked up a marker and began to write. As she did, Ethan's eyes lit up. And as they worked through the problem together, the room began to feel right. Like something that had been lost was being returned. Meanwhile, in a dark office across campus, the new man, the one Angela didn't recognize, stood over a phone call. She's set up, he said quietly. They've given her a title, access to students, and a secure space. The voice on the other end was robotic, masked. Did she access the files? Yes. She opened clean slate. A pause. Then she's getting close. We need to act before she remembers everything. Do you want me to pull her out? The man asked. No, the voice said. We'll let her teach. Let her get comfortable. She'll lead us to the backups. And if she doesn't? Another pause. Then make it look like an accident. The line went dead. Back in her office, Angela was erasing the board when she noticed something on the windowsill. A folded piece of paper. She hadn't put it there. She opened it slowly. They know who you are. They're watching. Check the boiler room camera. Timestamp 7:32 a.m. Angela's breath caught. She dropped her marker and turned toward her drawer, unlocking the laptop again, hands trembling. She pulled up the school's internal camera system. Her old janitor code still worked. She entered the timestamp. 7:32 a.m. The camera above the boiler room flickered to life. Angela saw her cart sitting outside the closet, untouched. Then, a figure entered frame. Not a student. Not a teacher. Someone in a dark coat. Gloves. Hood pulled tight. Spray paint in hand. The person turned toward the camera, looked right at it, then reached up and, bam, smashed the lens. Angela froze the screen. Just before the camera cut out, the figure's face came into focus. It was the same man from the hallway. She stared at the screen. Now she wasn't just part of a mystery. She was being hunted. Angela locked her office door with slow, deliberate hands. The sound of the bolt sliding into place echoed in the small room. She turned back to the frozen image on her laptop screen. The man's face, cold, sharp, calculated, stared back at her just before the camera feed cut out. Her mind raced. Who put the note on the windowsill? How did they know she'd checked the boiler room camera? And why was someone from Cleanslate following her? She reached for her notebook, flipped to a blank page, and began writing. Male, 40s, military posture. Had clearance-level awareness of camera placement. Possibly trained in tactical surveillance. Message left by someone else, ally unknown. She circled the last line twice. Someone knew she was being watched. Someone on the inside. There was no time to lose. Angela opened a secure channel on her laptop, one only she knew how to use. A black screen flashed. She typed, Command, pulse check, AS-01 to Mirage. A pause. Then a message blinked in. Mirage online. You're in danger. Get out. Her hands hovered over the keyboard. She typed, Who else is compromised? The reply came fast. Almost everyone. Stay invisible. Trust no one. Angela's breath caught. She stared at the words like they were ghosts. Then the screen went black. Connection lost. Outside her door, a knock. Sharp. Controlled. Angela closed the laptop in a flash and slid it back into the drawer, locking it. She wiped the board clean and opened the door just enough to peek through. Mr. Thornton stood there, eyes low. No smugness. No fire. Just shame. Angela opened the door wider, but said nothing. Can I talk to you? He asked. Not as staff. Just as someone who owes you an apology. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. He stepped inside, hands in his pockets. He didn't look at her. He just walked to the corner and sat down in the student chair across from her desk. I've been a terrible person, he said, voice soft. I was threatened by you the second I saw what you could do. I used to think I was the smartest person in every room. Until you proved me wrong without even trying. Angela crossed her arms. You did more than act threatened. You humiliated me, lied about me, and you were there when my cart was vandalized. I didn't do it, he said quickly. I swear. But I didn't stop it either. And I should have. Angela looked at him for a long moment. She believed him. At least that part. But why are you telling me this now? She asked. Thornton looked up. Because I think someone is trying to get rid of you. Not just your job. You. Angela's chest tightened. What do you know? Thornton pulled something from his jacket pocket. A keycard. It was black, unmarked, except for a glowing red strip along the edge. This was left in my classroom drawer. No note. No name. Nothing. But when I scanned it outside the custodial hallway, it unlocked the panel beside the boiler room. Angela's blood ran cold. That door hadn't been used in years. You kept it? She asked. I didn't know who else to give it to. But I figured you'd know what to do. Angela took the card slowly, sliding it into her notebook. Thank you, she said. He stood, uncertain. Does this make us even? Angela gave a sad smile. It makes us even enough for now. That night, Angela returned to the school. Alone. She wore a black hoodie and gloves. The kind of thing that would have made her look suspicious if anyone else was around. But at this hour, no one was. She slid through the side door, bypassing the alarms using the same override she used to use when working late. The halls were dark. Only the exit signs glowed red. She moved swiftly past the gym, down the corridor that led to the janitorial closet, and stopped in front of a wall panel most people didn't even notice. Angela tapped the card to the reader. Click. The panel opened silently. Behind it was a narrow staircase descending into the old sub-basement. A part of the school even the current staff didn't know existed. Angela took a breath and stepped down into the dark. The stairwell was cold, lined with crumbling brick. At the bottom, a small steel door. Angela used the keycard again. It hissed open. Inside was something she hadn't seen in 5 years. A control room. Not for the school, but for surveillance. Monitors flickered to life, each one showing different areas of the campus. Some were live. Others were on loops. There were audio feeds, old files, archived video. Angela scanned the monitors, and there he was, the man from the hallway, inside the principal's office. But Principal Harris wasn't there. Angela leaned in. The audio crackled. She still has the backups, the man said. We need to make sure she never reactivates the core. What core? Angela whispered to herself. She switched cameras, clicked through the logs. Then she froze. One feed was labeled, Lab, Underground Level. The timestamp was from that morning. It showed the same man, unlocking a case. Inside, a small device. Square. Blinking red. Angela knew that tech. It was from Clean Slate. And it wasn't just surveillance. It was a remote data wipe bomb, set to destroy every trace of her old work. Her identity. Her past. And if anyone was near it when it went off. Angela backed away from the screen, pulse racing. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Coming down the stairwell. Someone else was here. And she was trapped. The footsteps echoed closer, louder, sharper. Boots on old metal stairs. Angela's eyes darted around the sub-basement surveillance room. She had less than seconds to act. She killed the monitors with one keystroke. Total darkness. The heavy steel door behind her was the only exit. No windows. No other way out. Except, Angela spotted a floor panel near the corner of the room. A square outline in the concrete with a rusted handle. She grabbed it, yanked. It creaked loudly. Too loud. She froze. The footsteps stopped just beyond the steel door. Her breath caught. The floor hatch finally gave way with a groan. Angela slipped inside and pulled it shut just as the outer door began to open. From her hiding place in the crawl space below, she heard the hinges scream as the main door swung open. Boots stepped inside. Heavy, deliberate, then silence. Angela didn't dare breathe. A flashlight beam swept the room above her, passing over the now dead screens and the floor where she had just been standing. Then a voice. Not the stranger. Someone else. You're sure she saw the core? Yes, the man answered. She's one of the original architects. She'll recognize it. Angela clenched her jaw. So it was true. They knew who she was. And they were scared of what she remembered. Then we move up the timetable, the second voice said. We set the device tonight. When the school's empty. And the girl. There was a pause. If she's inside when it triggers, that's her problem. Angela's fists tightened. Then the door slammed shut. Bootsteps retreated. And the moment they were gone, she shoved the hatch open and climbed out. She was shaking. But not from fear. From rage. They were planning to destroy everything. The school. The evidence. Her. Unless she stopped them. Back at home. A small, one-bedroom apartment she kept just outside town. Angela locked the door, unplugged her phone, and powered up a backup drive. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. She uploaded footage from the security feed, timestamps, audio files, and the blueprints of the clean slate device she had memorized years ago. Then she pulled out a second notebook. This one was older, weathered and faded. Inside were codes, diagrams, equations, not math problems, algorithms. Clean slate's fail-safe was buried in its design. A built-in backdoor. She had designed it herself, years ago, when she still believed the program would protect people. Now it was the only way to disarm the device. And she was the only one who could do it. But she'd need help. She reached for her phone. Thought hard. Only one person came to mind. Ms. Clark. She dialed. Hello. It's Angela. Are you okay? Everyone's been asking. I don't have time. I need your help. And I need you to trust me. A pause. Then, where do I meet you? Angela gave the address of the school. Midnight. Side entrance. Don't tell anyone. Not even the principal. Wait. Is this about the fire alarm last week? Or is this about you? Angela sighed. It's about all of us. The moon was high by the time Ms. Clark arrived, bundled in a hoodie and jeans. Her flashlight swung nervously as she moved toward the shadowed figure standing by the school's side door. Angela opened it with an old keycard, motioning her inside. They moved fast, ducking through hallways and slipping into the sub-basement. Once inside, Angela showed her everything. The footage, the clean slate blueprint, the plan to wipe the school, and her, off the map. Ms. Clark stared at the screens, stunned. This is a bomb. A data bomb, Angela said. But it's got enough kinetic discharge to take out half this floor. If they planted it under the library. Ms. Clark paled. That's right under the student files. The records office. The server room. Angela nodded. They're trying to erase everything. All evidence I ever existed. All of my work. And all the surveillance they've used to control staff. It's the same method they used at my last university. Except this time, they're leaving no witnesses. Ms. Clark was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood straighter. What do we do? Angela handed her a USB stick. We split the work. You upload this to the school server and push the files to 5 locations. Press, education boards, parent groups, anyone with influence. What about you? Angela picked up her notebook, flipping to the back page, where the clean slate shutdown code lived. I'm going to find the device. Ms. Clark reached out, grabbing her arm. What if you don't make it in time? Angela met her eyes. Then you finish what I started. 15 minutes later, Angela slipped into the school's basement mechanical corridor. She found the access grate already loosened. Someone had been here recently. Inside, wires ran like veins along the walls. Steam hissed from old pipes. Then she saw it. A small black case bolted under the boiler panel. Blinking red. She crouched beside it, entering the code from her notebook. Access denied. She cursed under her breath. Tried again. Access denied. She stared. Thought. Then she realized. They updated the encryption. Someone had locked her out of her own design. And just as she started to reroute the system manually, a shadow fell across her. She turned. Too late. A blow struck her head. She collapsed to the floor. The world blurred. As her vision dimmed, she saw boots. The same ones from the stairwell. The man leaned down. I told them this would be messy, he said. You should have stayed a janitor. Then everything went black. Darkness. Thick, suffocating, endless darkness. Angela floated inside it. Her head throbbing, her thoughts scrambled. Echoes of the man's voice clanged around her skull like rusted bells. You should have stayed a janitor. But she wasn't just a janitor. And she wasn't done. Her eyes fluttered open. Everything was blurred. The air reeked of oil, metal, and the bitter tingle of overheated circuits. She was lying on the cold tile floor of the boiler corridor, hands zip-tied behind her back. A dull, pulsing red glow lit the walls. The clean slate device. Still active. Still counting down. Angela craned her neck to see the control screen. 18 minutes and 29 seconds. 18 minutes. She twisted her wrists. Tight. Too tight. Somewhere above her, she heard movement. Footsteps. Not heavy boots this time. Light. Careful. Someone was coming. The corridor door creaked open. Angela held her breath. And then, Angela. It was Ms. Clark. Angela tried to speak, but her throat was dry. I saw the man leave. Clark said quickly, kneeling beside her. He didn't see me. I followed him halfway out the building, then doubled back. I figured you might need help. Angela exhaled hard. Cut me loose. Fast. Clark pulled a pair of scissors from her pocket and sliced through the plastic ties. Angela winced as feeling returned to her hands. How long? Clark asked, nodding at the device. Angela looked at the timer. 17 minutes and 52 seconds. Not enough, she muttered. The override key failed. They updated the code. Clark stood. So we stop it another way. Angela rubbed her wrists and looked up at the device. There's a capacitor junction buried under the board. If we short it, the whole system crashes. But what? Angela met her eyes. If I do it wrong, I could blow the charge manually. A beat passed. Then Clark said, without hesitation, then we do it right. They worked quickly. Angela removed the side panel, exposing a tangle of wires and blinking diodes. She guided Clark through each step. Clark's hands shook, but she followed every instruction. Blue wire. Red solder line. Capacitor junction number 4. Every second counted. 10 minutes and 24 seconds. Angela found the junction and pulled a modified circuit fork from her back pocket. She had grabbed it when leaving the surveillance room, just in case. She slid it between the wires, trying to match polarity. Sparks flew. The device beeped angrily. Clark flinched. Angela didn't. 7 minutes and 59 seconds. Okay. Angela breathed. Final wire. Clark hovered nearby. What happens when you pull it? If the failsafe's still in place, it powers down. If not, Angela didn't finish the sentence. She looked at Clark. Tell Ethan he's smart. And he should never dim that light for anyone. Clark swallowed hard. You'll tell him yourself. Angela nodded once. Then she reached in and pulled the wire. The device froze. A long, high-pitched beep. Angela and Clark both covered their ears. Then, silence. The lights died. The red glow vanished. Angela sat back against the wall, her breath catching in her throat. It was over. The clean slate device was neutralized. For now. Later that night, back in the surveillance room, Angela stared at the system logs. She had uploaded the entire event to her private drive. The voice recordings, the footage, the countdown, evidence, not just for herself, but for the world. Ms. Clark returned, carrying a cup of coffee in each hand. She handed one to Angela. Principal Harris wants to meet tomorrow morning, she said. He doesn't know everything, but he's starting to connect the dots. Angela sipped slowly. We can't tell him everything. Not yet. But we can give him enough to make him believe. Clark nodded. And the man. Angela opened a file. The face of the man from the hallway stared back. Name's Davis Rowe, she said. Used to be clean slate security. Dishonorably discharged 3 years ago. Went private. Freelance cleaner. Cleaner? Clark asked. Angela met her gaze. Not the mop kind. Clark swallowed. We've got one shot at this, Angela continued. If we bring this to light, they'll either bury us or run. Clark smiled faintly. Then let's make M run. Angela looked down at her notebook, then back at the screen, and then she saw it. A new message blinking in the corner of her system. Incoming transmission Mirage. Angela clicked it open. They know you stopped the device. You have 48 hours before the next phase. Get out, or go public. Angela stared at the screen. This wasn't over. It had just begun. Angela didn't sleep. She sat at her small kitchen table, the glow from her laptop casting long shadows across the room. The message from Mirage replayed in her mind on a loop. You have 48 hours before the next phase. The clean slate team wouldn't stop. They'd tried to erase her, with a smear campaign, then with fire, and now with a bomb. What came next wouldn't be subtle. Across from her, the black notebook lay open. Every name, every pattern, every whisper she'd recorded over the years stared back at her like puzzle pieces she hadn't yet arranged. She grabbed a red pen and drew a line between two names. Davis Rowe, the cleaner. Harrison Group, the ghost company behind Clean Slate. She circled one more. Principal Harris. Something wasn't sitting right. He had helped her, yes, but only after her genius was exposed. Only after it became too risky to ignore her. Was he being honest? Or just protecting the school's reputation? She needed answers. Fast. The next morning, the school parking lot buzzed with activity. Students lined up outside, waiting to re-enter after an unexpected overnight systems test had kept the building closed all morning. Staff stood around in tight clusters, whispering. Angela approached the front doors wearing her blazer, her staff badge gleaming under the rising sun. People noticed her now. Some nodded. Others looked away. One teacher offered a weak smile and a good morning. like that would erase the weeks of silence and suspicion. She kept walking. The moment she stepped into the office wing, Principal Harris called her name. "Angela, can I speak with you a moment?" She followed him into his office. He closed the door. "I've been reviewing what you sent me," he said, nodding toward a manila folder on his desk. "The video footage, the audio files. This is bigger than anything I imagined." Angela didn't sit. "And yet, you haven't called the police." Harris hesitated. "I can't. Not without causing full-scale panic. If people find out we had a bomb in the school, we could lose everything: funding, students, accreditation. So, you're protecting your job." "I'm protecting everyone's job." Angela leaned forward. "There was a student in this building when that device was planted. What if someone had been hurt?" He didn't answer. Angela stared at him. "I need your help. Real help. I don't care about your career. I care about the truth. Clean Slate is still active. Someone's financing this. They'll come again." Harris sat down heavily. "Then what do you need?" Angela handed him a USB drive. "Distribute this. Press. Board. Parents. Quietly. Say it's an anonymous whistleblower. Leak it to everyone." "And what are you going to do?" Angela straightened. "I'm going to finish what I started 5 years ago." That afternoon, Angela and Ms. Clark sat side by side in the school's computer lab. Angela had loaded her recovery code into a secure sandbox environment, an isolated system that couldn't be tracked. The goal? Access the original Clean Slate server. But the connection was locked behind multiple encryption walls. Angela typed furiously. They buried it. Deep. But they didn't erase it completely. Cowards always leave themselves a way back in. Clark kept watch at the door, heart pounding. Angela bypassed the third firewall, then cracked an admin protocol buried in what looked like student data. Suddenly, a file popped open. Project Echo Mirror. Angela froze. "I know that name," she said. "It wasn't part of Clean Slate. It was after. A mirror program. Tracking educational systems. Predicting student behavior." Clark blinked. "Wait, predicting?" Angela clicked the file. What opened next chilled them both. Student names. Academic paths, predicted outcomes. Social influence rankings. Every child in the district had a profile. And beside each name, a rating. "Angela," Clark whispered. They were using this school as a test zone. Assigning students labels. Controlling outcomes. Giving high scorers more resources. And burying the rest. Angela's stomach turned. "I thought they wanted to erase me," she said. "But it's bigger than that. They're experimenting on children. Using their data to decide who succeeds and who disappears." Suddenly, the screen went black. Connection interrupted. Then, intrusion detected. Angela ripped the drive from the system and shut everything down. "We need to go," she said. "Now." Back at her apartment, Angela plugged the drive into her offline system. She opened the recovered files and began copying them to 5 separate encrypted servers, backups of backups. They couldn't silence her again. Not this time. Then, a knock at the door. Angela grabbed a kitchen knife and crept toward it. "Miss Simmons," a voice called. "It's Ethan." Angela blinked. She opened the door. Ethan stood there, holding his backpack. He looked nervous. I found this in my locker," he said, handing her a slip of paper. Angela took it, unfolded it. Typed. "Plain. We know you've seen the ratings. The program resumes tomorrow. Keep quiet, or the next one won't be a warning." Angela looked at Ethan. "Did anyone else see this?" He shook his head. Angela's mind raced. They were watching the students now, using them to deliver threats. "Ethan," she said, kneeling in front of him. "You're smart. Smarter than most of the people running this school. But right now, I need you to be brave, too." Ethan looked at her and nodded. Angela stood, walked to her desk, and unlocked a drawer. She pulled out an old hard case, black, dented, sealed with a thumbprint lock. Inside, a slim, black wrist device. The original prototype. The one they thought was destroyed. Angela strapped it on. Then she turned to Clark, who had just walked in. "It's time to shut them down. All of them." Clark looked stunned. "Are you sure?" Angela's eyes burned with purpose. "I've waited 5 years to take back my name. But now, it's about every name they tried to bury." And with that, she opened a new window on her laptop. Operation Uprising. Initiated. Midnight. A storm rolled over the city, thunder rattling windows and lightning carving streaks of blue fire across the sky. Inside the school, the lights were out. Security systems were offline. The building sat in a manufactured silence, but it wasn't empty. Angela stood in the heart of the library's underground archive, a space no student had ever seen. The hallway lights buzzed with low voltage. Dust floated like ash. She wore the wrist device now, a sleek band of black steel with a pulse of dim blue light traveling across its surface every few seconds. It synced with her movement, her breath, and more importantly, her mind. The prototype was years ahead of its time, a wearable neural interface. She had designed it for remote data decryption and file restoration. But tonight, it had one purpose: to break into CleanSlate's core server node and expose the truth. Miss Clark's voice buzzed in through a tiny earpiece. "I'm in the AV room. Feed is live. Broadcasting in 30 seconds. Are you sure about this, Angela?" Angela touched the side of her device. "It's the only way. The moment I send the live key to the press, there's no going back." Clark hesitated. "And the school?" Angela glanced at the wall. On it, framed photos of past principals, past teachers, past students. "Let them burn down the system," Angela said. "We'll build something better." She plugged the prototype into a hidden port behind the filing cabinets. The access point hadn't been touched in decades. She'd wired it herself when she worked as a janitor, one of the 1,000 things they never noticed because they never looked. As the drive connected, the device on her wrist pulsed rapidly. CleanSlate's core lit up on the monitor. Files began unraveling, one by one. Surveillance logs, grading manipulation orders, parental profile ranking data, student trajectory forecasts, even financial records showing donations from private defense contractors who'd used the students for data training in predictive behavior algorithms. Angela whispered to herself, "This is it." And then she did it. She hit send. To the press. To parents. To the Department of Education. 1,000 secrets flew into the light. And at the same moment, a power surge hit the school. The screen flickered. Angela stepped back as smoke curled from the wires. "Angela," Clark's voice crackled through the comm. "The server room is triggering a purge." Angela stared in horror as the system tried to auto-destroy itself, a final fail-safe. But the prototype glowed hotter. It resisted. Angela's design was winning. Until the sound of a gunshot rang out upstairs. Angela's heart stopped. Then, another shot. And a scream. "Clark," she shouted into the mic. "Clark, answer me." No reply. She ripped the drive from the wall and sprinted up the staircase, each step echoing with the pounding of her heart. Lightning flashed outside as she burst into the AV wing. The hallway was empty, but a chair was overturned. And there, slumped against the wall, was Ms. Clark, a gash above her brow. Unconscious, but alive. Angela dropped to her knees. "Clark! Clark, wake up!" A shuffle of feet behind her. She turned and saw him. Davis Rowe, soaked in rain, holding a gun. "You never could leave well enough alone," he said. Angela stood slowly, eyes on the weapon. "You're late," she replied. "The truth's already out." Rowe smirked. "Doesn't matter. By morning, we'll scrub it all. That was always the plan. Bury you again, just like last time." Angela clenched her fists. "No," she said. "This time, I'm not alone." And from behind Rowe, bang, a flash. He staggered, the gun clattering to the floor. Miss Clark, half awake, had reached into her jacket and fired the flare gun from the AV emergency kit. Angela didn't hesitate. She kicked the weapon away, then dragged Rowe's arms behind him and zip-tied his wrists. He growled through clenched teeth. "You think this stops anything?" Angela leaned in close. "No," she whispered. "But it starts something." Sirens howled in the distance. She stood as red and blue lights flashed through the hallway windows. 2 hours later, Angela stood outside the school. News vans lined the street. Police walked Davis Rowe toward a cruiser. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. The story was everywhere. Whistleblower exposes secret surveillance program in local high school. Black woman once called just a janitor uncovers national conspiracy. District faces backlash over student data manipulation. Angela said nothing to the reporters. She didn't need to. The truth was louder than any words. Inside the school, students arrived one by one, reading the headlines on their phones. Ethan stared at her from across the courtyard. Angela walked over. He looked up. "You did it." Angela smiled. "We did." And then the most unbelievable thing happened. A teacher, one of the same ones who once mocked her, approached. Nervous. Awkward. Miss Simmons, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Angela looked at him. Don't apologize to me, she said, turning toward the students. Apologize to them. And with that, she walked toward the front doors. Her name on the wall now read, Angela Simmons, Director of Advanced Learning Programs. She pushed the doors open. Light flooded in. And for the first time in a long time, Angela felt free. The days that followed were like a flood of sunlight after years underground. News stations from across the country scrambled to tell Angela's story, the genius who had been hidden in plain sight, who swept floors by day and unraveled impossible systems by night. Everywhere she went now, people stared. But it wasn't the same kind of stare anymore. It wasn't invisibility. It was recognition. Students came to her office in droves, not just for tutoring, but for answers. Questions like, why did they rate us? Was I on a list? Does this mean I'm not actually dumb? Angela answered them all, every time with the same look in her eyes, fierce and kind, like a fire that would never go out again. No one has the right to define your future but you. Still, not everyone was thrilled by the change. The school board had been forced into damage control. A formal review of all administrative personnel had begun, with surprise audits and panicked meetings. Some staff resigned quietly. Others tried to backpedal or deny they ever supported the rating system. And through it all, Angela remained calm, unshaken, until the phone call. It came just after midnight. She was alone in her apartment, sipping tea, when her cell lit up with a private number. She hesitated, then answered. A calm, male voice spoke. You're making things complicated, Miss Simmons. Angela's spine stiffened. Who is this? Someone who used to believe in clean slate. Someone who helped you build it. Her stomach turned. It couldn't be. Garrett. You remember me. Angela gritted her teeth. Garrett Miles had been her partner. Not romantically, but in vision, in intellect. Years ago, they co-designed the foundational framework for CleanSlate's predictive algorithms. He had disappeared after the first leak scandal. She thought he'd been silenced or killed. Instead, he was still working for them. I saw the video, he continued. Nice touch. Dramatic. Heartfelt. A little rebellious. You always did know how to make a mess. What do you want? Angela asked. To offer you a way out. One last time. Angela narrowed her eyes. I don't need a way out. I broke out. Garrett's voice dropped. You have 48 hours before the federal networks launch a counter-narrative. You'll be discredited, buried in false accusations. They'll paint you as unstable. You know how this works. The public forgets fast. Angela didn't speak. You can join us again, he said. We rebuild clean slate. From the shadows this time. No more schools. Just global strategy. Quiet. Powerful. Clean. Angela's heart pounded. You want me to come back and help finish the system that tried to erase me? It was never about you, Angela. It was about control. You just forgot which side you were on. She hung up. Her hand shook. Then she opened her laptop, typed one word into her server, Garrett, and began tracing his signal. By morning, Angela stood in front of the full student body during an emergency assembly. Every eye was on her. Some teachers stood along the walls, unsure if they should be inspired or terrified. Angela stepped up to the podium. Some of you still don't understand what happened, she began. You were graded, ranked, judged, not just on tests or behavior, but on invisible algorithms that determined how far they thought you'd go in life. And then, your access was shaped around that. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Angela continued. I used to be like them. I wrote those codes. I believed I was building something that could help education fix inequality. But it wasn't used to help. She looked around the gym, locking eyes with student after student. It was used to eliminate risk. To eliminate you. Gasps. Some students whispered in horror. Others glared up at staff members who had stayed quiet. Angela raised her voice. But I'm not here to give you fear. I'm here to give you access. Real access. To knowledge. To truth. To your future. Applause began softly. Then louder. Then a roar. And Angela stepped down from the stage with a single tear on her cheek. Not from sadness, but from release. That night, in a borrowed workspace Clark had secured for her downtown, Angela's code came to life. She had found Garrett's location, or at least his digital trail. A cluster of servers operating out of a shell company in Zurich. And within them, the new version of CleanSlate. Angela hacked in, bypassing layer after layer of encryption. Her wrist device synced again, pulsing stronger than ever. At the center of the system, she found what Garrett had been building. Blackboard Project. Target, National Education Grid Integration, NEGI. They weren't stopping with schools. They were going to automate entire education systems using behavior data, expelling students before they even enrolled. Angela froze. This wasn't just about her anymore. It wasn't just about one school. It was about every student in America. She opened her code window, pulled up her last resort script, the one called Rewrite. She hesitated. Once she ran this, it would destroy every trace of Clean Slate, Blackboard, Echo Mirror, everything, and every secret file she and Garrett ever built. It would make her a ghost again, but it would also make every student free. Angela closed her eyes and pressed enter. Lines of code blurred. Systems failed. Files burned. Servers across continents blinked offline. And then, silence. Total. Final. Angela leaned back in her chair, breathing deeply. And then her phone rang. A text from Clark. "We've done it. The department's coming. They want to talk to you." Angela stared at the message. Then she smiled. Maybe she wouldn't be a ghost after all. Maybe this time they'd see her. All of her. The Department of Education building in Washington, D.C., was a monument to bureaucracy, tall, gray, and lined with glass that reflected a distorted version of the world outside. But this morning, it reflected something different. Angela Simmons. She stepped out of the black government vehicle, escorted by 2 federal investigators and flanked by Clark on her left. A small crowd had gathered by the steps. Activists, students, reporters. Signs rose into the air. "Protect our kids, not data. Justice for Angela. We are more than our scores." Angela's feet were steady on the marble steps. The moment felt surreal, like her whole life had been one long fall, and now, somehow, she was standing. Clark whispered, "You ready?" Angela didn't answer. She didn't have to. She walked into the building and disappeared behind security doors. Inside a private federal hearing room, 10 suits waited for her. Some stern, some skeptical, others curious. Angela sat calmly. They began asking questions. At first, simple ones. Where did the data come from? How did you access the system? What proof do you have of its intent? Then came the deeper ones. How many students were affected? Were school staff involved knowingly? Why didn't you report it sooner? Angela answered each one without flinching. "I tried to report it. Years ago. No one listened. Not until it became undeniable." They played clips from the leaked footage, including Garrett's voice from the intercepted call. They examined the student prediction logs, the manipulated funding trails, and the explosive details about the Blackboard project. It was undeniable. Angela's evidence had torn the mask off a monster. But then, the hardest question came. What do we do now? The panel of officials looked at her, not with judgment, but with something strange. Hope. Angela spoke. "You tear it down," she said. "All of it. You ban predictive student profiling at the federal level. You restore funding to the schools that were targeted, and you investigate every contract awarded through Clean Slate and its sister projects. You create legislation that makes this kind of surveillance illegal." Silence filled the room. Then a man near the center leaned forward. "And what about you, Miss Simmons? What do you want?" Angela paused. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she had to fight for air. She smiled. "I want to build something honest, something real. And I want every student who was labeled low potential to get the chance they were never given." The panel nodded. Then one by one, they stood and applauded. 2 weeks later, Angela returned to the school, not to clean floors, not to patch systems, but to lead. The old office, once dusty and forgotten, had been transformed. Bright, clean, walls lined with student projects, blueprints, books. A new sign hung outside. Center for Independent Learning, Director, Angela Simmons. Students passed through every hour. They didn't knock anymore. They wanted to be there. Angela sat at her desk reviewing a letter when someone knocked lightly. It was Ethan. He held something in his hands, a tablet. On it, an article from the New York Times. The headline read, "Whistleblower turned education leader. Angela Simmons named National Consultant for Education Reform Act." Ethan beamed. "They said your name on TV." Angela chuckled. "I heard. You're going to D.C. again?" he asked. "For a bit," she said. "But I'll still be here. Every week. This place, it's home." Ethan hesitated. Then he said something she would never forget. "Miss Simmons, you made me believe I'm more than my report card. Angela's throat tightened. She stood and gave him a quick hug. You are. Never forget that. That night, Angela sat on the rooftop of her apartment building, looking out at the city lights. She opened the black notebook for what felt like the last time. Inside were old names, equations, diagrams, sketches, remnants of her old world. She flipped to the back, where once she had written, "Stay invisible." She now wrote, "Never again." She closed the book, and as a warm breeze passed through, she whispered into the night. For every student who was ever overlooked, this was for you. But just as she turned to go inside, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. One message. He's gone dark. Garrett's missing. Angela's blood ran cold. She stared into the city. This wasn't over. Not yet. 3 days. That's how long Garrett Miles had been missing. No digital trail. No camera logs. No offshore server pings. Gone. Angela sat in a high-rise government office in D.C., staring at an encrypted tablet with only a blinking cursor on the screen. The Department of Education, now heavily auditing every clean slate-related contract, had elevated her to a national advisor role. But right now, none of that mattered. She tapped the screen. The system flickered. Still no trace of him. He'd either gone completely off-grid, or someone helped him disappear. Clark entered the room with 2 coffees in hand. Her wrist was in a soft brace from the AV room injury, but her steps were firm now, confident. She placed 1 coffee down beside Angela. You haven't slept. Angela gave a tired smile. Didn't really plan to. Still nothing? Angela shook her head. No ping. No burner device. No financial logins. Garrett just vanished. Clark took a seat. Maybe it's over. Angela looked out the window. No, he's not the type to run. He's the type to regroup. Rebuild. A long silence stretched between them. Then Angela sighed. But even if he's out there, he can't erase what we've done. Clark leaned forward. You changed everything. Legislation is coming. Schools are being restructured. Predictive systems have been shut down. And more importantly, kids like Ethan, like all those low-rated students, are being seen for the first time. Angela looked down at her wrist, at the faded tan line where the prototype used to be. She'd taken it off 2 days ago. It was time to live without needing it. Back at the school, the atmosphere had changed completely. Where once there were whispers and avoidance, now there were handshakes, gratitude, and even admiration. The Center for Independent Learning bustled with students from all grades, the once overlooked now mentoring others, building projects, presenting at state fairs. Ethan had recently been accepted into an advanced robotics program, the same program his algorithmic profile once said he wasn't suited for. Angela had written his recommendation letter herself. Every student she spoke with reminded her why she had risked everything. And every time she heard the hallway echo with laughter or saw a shy kid raise their hand, she knew. This is what victory looks like. Not confetti, not medals, freedom. On the day of the Education Reform Act signing, Angela stood behind the president as cameras flashed. The bill would outlaw algorithmic student profiling nationwide and provide funding for equity-based learning initiatives. As the president turned to hand her the pen, the room erupted in applause. Angela smiled, accepting it not for herself, but for every child who'd been told, "You can't," and did anyway. That night, she returned home. The apartment was still quiet, still hers, still real. She sat at the kitchen table, opened her old black notebook. This time, she turned to a blank page. She wrote, Angela Simmons, Ph.D., educator, whistleblower, survivor, advocate, not just a janitor. She closed it gently. Then something caught her eye, a small envelope beneath her door. No return address. Angela picked it up, heart slowing just slightly. She opened it. Inside was a single playing card, the Queen of Spades. Her hand trembled. Only one person ever called her that. Years ago during Clinslate's development, when Garrett jokingly said, "You always see the whole board before anyone else. You're the queen that flips the table." Angela set the card down, turned it over. On the back, a message scrawled in clean, sharp handwriting. Round 2 is coming. But this time, the board is global. Angela didn't flinch. She simply smiled. Because she wasn't hiding anymore. Not her name. Not her mind. Not her purpose. She stood tall, walked to the window, and stared out into the vast city below. A voice rose inside her, steady, strong, unshaken. Let them come.